The donkey didn't move. Not when the whip cracked near its heels. Not when grain was scattered in a silver tin, nor when two ranch hands shoved from behind like trying to budge a stone. The beast stood as if carved from earth itself, eyes dull but watching, legs locked, ribs pressing through dusty hide. Herlin Smith stood a few steps back, hat low, arms folded. The auction crowd had laughed when he made the final bid. Laughed harder when the donkey didn't budge from the platform, even when the rope was tugged tight. "Ain't no man ever made that creature walk," the auctioneer grinned, lighting a match on his booth eel. "Reckon it's broken inside. Or cursed." Herlin didn't answer. He simply paid in coin, looped the rope once around his gloved hand, and walked. The donkey didn't follow. So he sat down beside it. The sky above was wide and disinterested, a pale lid over the cracked soil of late summer. Flies circled lazily. Dust clung to sweat. Herlin tipped his canteen and let a few drops fall to the ground between them. "Suit yourself," he murmured. The donkey blinked once. It was near sundown when the animal finally shifted, just one step. No struggle, no sound, as if deciding in its own sacred time that maybe the man was worth following. That night, the donkey didn't rest in the barn, though Herlin left the door open. It stood outside, facing south, unmoving in the moonlight, like a statue with a pulse, watching something far beyond the fence. Over the next 3 days, the same. It would not walk unless Herlin was near, but even then, only a step or two. It ate little, drank only if he held the tin. Folks at the edge of town began whispering. "The man's gone soft, talking to that creature like it understands." But it did seem to understand, just not the words he used. Herlin muttered every kind of encouragement, threat, coax, and curse he'd ever known, but the donkey ignored them all. Until one evening, when he rubbed down the animal's side and felt a seam under the harness. A scrap of cloth tucked in tight. He pried it loose. Worn red, sun-bleached at the edges, stitched by uneven hands. It smelled faintly of something human. Smoke, salt, youth. Along the frayed edge, in tiny black thread, "Nomi Alvides." The words stuck in his mouth the first time he tried them. Herlin wasn't a man used to foreign tongues. But something about the phrase clung like a burr to his ribs. He whispered it again the next morning, half embarrassed. The donkey's ear twitched. It turned its head. Herlin stilled. Said it once more. This time, the donkey stepped forward. Just one step. But in that moment, it was as if the sun had shifted course and the whole prairie leaned in to listen. The ranch hands made jokes behind their gloves. But Herlin didn't care. Something had shifted. A thread pulled loose in the fabric of his life. He didn't know what yet, but he could feel the unravel. That night, he dreamed of mountains he hadn't seen in years, and a girl's voice calling out softly, though he could never quite catch the words. He rode into town the next day with a scrap of cloth tucked in his vest. Stopped at the old healer's place, where the air always smelled of dried roots and thyme. She squinted at the cloth, then at him. "That's a prayer," she said, fingers tracing the thread. "Or a promise. A child made this." Herlin stood in the doorway, silence pressed to the back of his teeth. She added, "Couple months back, there was a raid. South Trail. Migrants trying to cross the canyon. Guns drove 'em apart. They took animals. People ran." He nodded once. The weight of that cloth in his pocket suddenly heavier than iron. The donkey stared at the southern fence every night, unblinking. Once, in the early dawn, Herlin saw tears wet its muzzle. No sound, no pain, just silent grief watching the horizon like it owed it something. So he saddled up. Didn't tell the others. Didn't write a note. He left water for the hens and enough hay in the loft, and rode out with the donkey trailing behind him, untethered, free to turn back if it wanted. But it didn't. For 2 days they moved southward, the heat biting, silence stretching between the hills. Vultures circled high and disinterested. On the second evening, he caught sight of Prince, small, barefoot, moving unevenly across the dust. By morning, he found her. She was curled beside a dry creek, legs thin as twigs, arms wrapped around her knees. No shoes. One braid undone. Skin cracked from sun, lips bloodless. A few strands of fabric tied around her waist where once must have been a dress. When she saw the donkey, she didn't cry out. She whispered, "Cielo." The donkey brayed, a strangled, aching sound, and bolted toward her, nearly knocking Herlin from his horse. The girl stood and stumbled forward. The donkey pressed its nose against her chest like it was breathing her in. She sobbed once, then again, and sank down, arms thrown around its neck like a child clutching a ghost. Herlin dismounted slowly. His hands ached from gripping the reins too hard. He knelt a few feet away. "You hurt?" he asked. She nodded, but it wasn't clear if it was yes or just the body shaking. He gave her water. She drank with both hands and didn't stop until it dripped down her chin. Then she said something else, in broken words. "Mama, gone. Guns. Dogs." Her voice trailed. He didn't ask more. He offered his coat. Lifted her up. The donkey followed every step back to camp. They rode in silence. He didn't know her name. She didn't ask his. At night, she curled against the donkey's side, hand gripping its mane like it was her only thread back to the world. When they reached the ranch, the cook stared, mouth open, and dropped a pan. No questions came. Herlin said, "She stays." He gave her the room closest to the barn. Small, warm, quiet. Taught her to gather eggs. She spoke little, but listened like everything mattered. Days stretched. She learned to feed the chickens, to plant onions, to hold a brush steady in her hand as she combed the donkey's back. He caught her humming once, a tune soft as smoke. Something tender and private. He remembered it faintly, had heard it from a canyon singer long ago. One who wore a red scarf and said words he didn't understand. That night, Herlin found himself humming it too. And when he did, the girl looked up, smiled once. He hadn't known a smile could break a man open. Weeks passed. Then the knock came. A man in town clothes, papers in hand. Official seal. Voice too sharp. "We heard a child's been taken in. There are procedures." Herlin said nothing. The girl clung to his leg, eyes wide. The donkey stood between them, unmoving. The man stepped forward. Herlin pulled out a pen. Signed the paper. "She ain't leavin'." The man blinked. "You're adopting her?" "I'm keepin' a promise," Herlin replied, voice low. The girl pressed her face into his coat, whispering something soft. He thought he heard it. "Papa." The official left without another word. That evening, the donkey let Herlin place a palm on its forehead. For the first time, it closed its eyes. Exhaled. The girl now wore a clean dress. Her hair brushed. She led the donkey through the pasture, steps slow and careful, as if each one meant something. Herlin sat on the porch, boots muddy, a cup of coffee gone cold in his hand. He watched her. And he wondered how many other creatures waited like that donkey, not for orders or oats, but for one voice in all the world to call them home. Sometimes, it ain't the ones who move fast that matter. It's the ones who wait for someone who speaks their language, even if it's silence, even if it's love wrapped in something that can't be named. If this story settled somewhere in your chest, don't leave just yet. More tales are coming from the dust, from the dusk, from the forgotten corners of the West. Like, subscribe, and let me know, have you ever seen an animal wait for someone that wasn't coming? Or someone who still came?